Thank you for joining us this evening, and welcome to our Find Your Stride running series. This is a month-long collaboration between Mappy Hour and Get Out and Trek, sponsored by the North Face. Celebrates National Coming Out Day, October 11th, a time of reflection recognizing the barriers many in the LGBTQ community face. This series is a welcoming space where we lift voices, share resources, and support each other in getting out and running. My name is Keith Oberlin, founder of Get Out and Trek, an outdoor community for LGBTQ adventurists. Through our trips and events, we are changing the face of the outdoors for LGBTQ people and having fun while doing it. We go by our acronym GOAT. We call all of our members goats, and you can be a goat too by visiting beagoat.org. I'll be your host tonight and every night of the Find Your Stride running series. Also, doing production this evening is Sarah Knapp, founder of Mappy Hour. Those of you who are new to Mappy Hour, it's a community of urban dwelling outdoor enthusiasts with chapters across the country. Head to mappyhour.org to join dozens of virtual events just like this one. Tonight is our running injury prevention clinic. Before I introduce Dr. Kate, we have two items to review. First, whether you are joining us via mappyhour.org, Facebook, and YouTube, we have enabled a chat feature for you to discuss and ask questions. The rules are simple. Be a good community member, be kind to each other, and create a welcoming space for all. Second, all donations for this event and the entire Find Your Stride series go to Athlete Ally, a nonprofit whose mission is to end rampant homophobia and transphobia in sport. Any donation made tonight to Athlete Ally through mappyhour.org is an entry to win a North Face duffel bag. We'll announce tonight's winner at the end of the evening. Now on to the program. Tonight we are joined by Dr. Kate, physical therapist and a health and run coach with Own Your Movement and a Mappy Hour DC Chapter leader. Dr. Kate's going to lead us through an evidence-based injury clinic to help new and seasoned runners prevent injuries. And with that, I'll hand it off to Dr. Kate.
Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Kate Ayoub. So thanks Keith so much. I'm so excited to be a part of this. I'm going to be talking to you guys today about what you can do to prevent injuries while running. Oopsies, wrong slide. A disclaimer, while I am a medical provider, I'm not your medical provider, and this is not and should not be personal medical advice. I feel like I have to say that because I'm coming to you from Washington, D.C., where there's so many lawyers, so I'm just born saying disclaimers by living here. Talking a little bit about who I am. So I'm a physical therapist. I'm also a health coach. So I help people build healthy habits. So whether that's exercise, nutrition, sleep, stress management, I do that with virtual coaching. And I work with athletes, primarily endurance. So running, cyclists, or triathletes. And I love working with people who are overcoming injuries and trying to get back to sport after being injured or just trying to get into the sport in general. I'm an athlete myself. I started endurance sports about 2013, 2014. I got into cycling and triathlons, which culminated in 2017 doing an Ironman triathlon. The Ironman was actually my first ever marathon, which I don't necessarily recommend. Your first marathon after exercising for 6 to 8 hours is a little rough. I've also done a standalone marathon after that, but I'm really passionate about evidence-based medicine and talking to you guys about what you can do to not get injured. So there's a couple challenges when studying running injuries. The first challenge when you're digging into research, and disclaimer, I'm a huge nerd. I'm also I was that precocious child that never kind of grew out of it, that loved to ask why. My mom's on this, and so can probably attest to the fact that I was. And so I love digging into research. And there's a couple issues when we dig into the running injuries that make it a little tricky. The first is that researchers will define an injury slightly differently. Some research articles will say it's if you have pain. Some research articles will say it's if you missed a couple workouts. Some are if you had to go see a doctor. So some studies, it's hard to kind of compare across studies. The second challenge when you're digging into the research is it tends to be really small sample sizes, and most of them are college-age men. And most of us are not college-aged men, so it's tricky to extrapolate the data of 10 college-age athletes to somebody who's not in that demographic. The other challenge is, and this is just like misinformation everywhere, that a lot of times a research study will say one thing and then people will misinterpret it and make claims that that research study never made. And it's not even the researchers necessarily. I'll give an example. That foam rolling, the research behind it says that it decreases your perception of soreness. So what that means is that if you lift a lot of weights, you foam roll, the next day you'll say that you feel less sore than if you didn't foam roll. And what people then make claims about is that foam rolling will increase your performance or will decrease your risk of getting injured, when the research didn't really show that. What it said is that you're going to say you're less sore. So there's a lot of misinformation, and people will make really big claims when it comes to research, especially in the recovery world and the injury prevention world. And so I'm going to be kind of getting into a lot of that. If you're nerdy also with this stuff and want to dig into it more, a book recommendation is Good to Go by Christy Oshwanden. She's a really awesome writer that basically is a really approachable book to get into some of the recovery science. So 2 main ways runners get injured. The first one is we trip and we fall. This can be on a route, on just nothing, and there's some kind of a trauma or an impact, usually with the ground. The second way we get injured is either training error, overuse, or something just hurts. So I'm running, I'm at mile 4, and my knee starts killing me. There's not a clear accident or a clear thing that caused it. This is what we're going to be talking a little bit more about. The accidents happen. There's a couple things you can do to change your risk, but it's these other training errors, overuse injuries that we're going to be spending most of the time talking about. So established risk factors, meaning there's research behind them, of running injuries. So if you are a new runner, you're 2 to 3 times more likely to get injured than if you're a seasoned runner. And we're going to talk about why that is in a bit. If you rapidly increase your mileage or you're running more than 40 miles a week, it also increases your risk factor. And to backtrack for a second, risk factor doesn't mean you're going to get hurt. It just increases your risk of getting hurt. It's impossible to completely prevent an injury, but what we look at is what your risk profile is for an injury. So being a new runner, running too much too soon, or running a lot. If you're in competitive training mode, so what this means is that if you're training for a half marathon, a marathon, the race is looming, something hurts, you're ignoring it. So that competitive training mode increases your risk of getting injured. If you have a previous injury, statistically, you're more likely to get that injury again. And if you change the terrain, so you go from like pavement to trail running or trail running to sand running, or you change your shoes while doing high mileage weeks, and high mileage is anything over 40 miles a week, that also increases your risk of getting injured. So those 2 of them together have to happen. Things that don't seem to have a correlation, so they are not linked at all, at least with the studies that are out currently. If you have a longer training period, so if you're training for a marathon for 6 months versus 3 months, that doesn't seem to change your injury risk. If you do a lot of weightlifting to get your legs stronger, before you start running, there have been 2 studies that show that doesn't change your injury risk. Running on terrain like a trail or pavement doesn't seem to make a difference as long as you don't switch at that high mileage. How your foot is, your arch height has not been linked to injuries. Using an orthotic hasn't been linked to injury risk. Doing cross training, doing stretching, foam roll, or massage, all of them have no link to injury risk specifically. And whenever I mention those last couple, I always get people to be like, but what? Like, I love this. I heard that this helps with injuries and that helps. There are a lot of claims, and when you dig into the evidence, there's not a lot there. And by no means am I saying that stretching or foam rolling is bad. If you like it, do it, and it can have other benefits. But when it comes to injury risk, and if you're going to get injured, those don't seem to be coupled. But if you like foam rolling, there's no reason why you shouldn't be doing it. What we like to do instead is really focus on this equation. So you need to be training plus rest equals growth. And that growth can be either speed, you can lift more. If you're in the gym, you can run further. We need to train well, rest appropriately, and then we have growth. Most of the athletes that I work with or patients I work with in the clinic have some mismatch in this. Either their training is too much or too little, their rest is too much, oftentimes it's too little, and then they're either not making the gains that they want or they're getting injured. So to dig into it a little bit more, with training, what we talk about is appropriate load. And in running specifically, this means building up our weekly mileage slowly. So I'm going to use a gym example and then try to translate it into running. So if I go to the gym and I start bicep curling, 10 pounds, 10 reps, and that's about what I can handle. How I get stronger is every day I might add a couple reps and then I might do 12 for the next couple sessions, 15. I then will increase the weights, decrease the reps. So over time, I'm gradually increasing the load that I'm putting on my muscles. That kind of gradual increase helps create a training effect. If, though, I went to the gym, I can lift 10 pounds, 10 reps, that's about what I can do, and I get real cocky and I decide to lift 75 pounds bicep curls. So this is what I can handle. This is what I do. That mismatch, the misappropriation for what I can handle and what I'm lifting in the gym increases my risk of getting injured. It's similar with running, but gets a little trickier with figuring out what the load is. What we do from a research standpoint is we look at ground reaction force. So basically, the harder you hit the ground or the more often you hit the ground, the more impact you're getting. And we calculate that for training with weekly mileage. So we want to look at your weekly mileage, and that's how we decide how much load you're putting on your body. It's not perfect if you're running uphill, downhill, different terrains. It is going to change that ground reaction force a bit, but this is the best thing we have to kind of standardize what that load is. So training recommendations are 10% or less of weekly mileage increase per week. If I'm working with an athlete who has had a lot of injuries, especially any athlete who has bone stress injuries, I'm dropping this down to like 2 to 3% a week. The idea with this, right, is like really slowly building up. And if we build up too quick, more than that 10% weekly mileage increase, we drastically increase our risk for injuries. We also want to build up the mileage before we increase speed. So you should be able to run the distance before you work on running it fast. That's another area where I'll see athletes get injured is they start doing track workouts while continuing to do all their long runs. So if you're adding speed work, tempo work, doing track workouts or different interval things to get faster, make sure you're decreasing your weekly mileage because you're running faster, so you're hitting the ground harder, and that load is actually higher, even though the mileage is the same. And if there are questions as I'm running through, feel free to throw it in the comments. There's a couple pauses I'm going to take, so it's not going to distract me because I'm going to read them after when I take a pause. So if you're a newbie, whether that is new to running completely or you're getting back to running either because pandemic and the gyms are closed or after an injury, a couple strategies. The first one is doing walk-run intervals. So with this, you are going to just be gradually increasing the run time. If you want some examples of how to do this, Jeff Galloway was kind of the king of this. I want to say he started in the 70s. And he has some like really good free like 5K and 10K programs. So if you're curious about where to start, check him out. You also can run another newbie mistake that I see and what I recommend people to do is to run every other day or every third day. A lot of times athletes will sign up for I'm going to run every single day. And then week 2, they come to me injured because they didn't give themselves that appropriate rest time. So if you're new to running, make it every other day. Don't try to, we call it streaking, not getting naked while running, but running a bunch of days in a row. I do not recommend that if you're a newbie. So make sure you're putting in rest days. And you're going to want to build up incredibly slowly, especially if you're injury prone at all. And what I'm a big fan of, especially in the pandemic, is focusing on short-term benefits. So running is great. You get outside, you get fresh air, you get out of your house, you get endorphins, your mood gets better. And so a lot of times we'll set these really big goals for running, but if you're just getting into it, focus on those short-term benefits that you get. And that's really the reason why you're running, is like the reason I run is so I feel better after I run. And focusing on those short-term benefits can really help with motivation. It can sometimes get discouraging thinking of like the really long, big ones, especially in a pandemic where there's not a lot of races. All right, so we talked about the training piece. I'm going to pause for a second to see if there are any questions. All right, doesn't seem like there are. If you have any, free to throw them up. So next, we're going to, in this equation, we're going to talk about rest. And I mentioned I'm in DC. This is where my athletes have the biggest challenge, because DC is full of like type A++ people who are so motivated, which is amazing, because like they are like, and a lot of times are doing really good, impactful work, trying to save the world. And they have a really hard time taking rest breaks, or the idea of skipping a workout is weakness. And so rest is huge with training and can be an area that a lot of us struggle with, especially kind of in our type A society. This is a sports psychologist. I'm not going to pronounce his name because he's Swedish and I can't say it. But any fool can train more. It takes courage to rest. So it is really hard to give yourself the self-compassion to take a day off and give your body the space, the time and space to rest, especially now with us not really having vacations we're able to get to. So we're saving vacation days, but giving yourself time to rest is really important, both in running and in life. So with sleep, in general, for the general public, people should be getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep. For athletes, this is getting close to 8 to 10. Some professional athletes get close to like 10 to 12 hours of sleep. There's a lot in professional sports with sleep. Like they actually hire sleep specialists so that when in non-pandemic times, when they're not in a bubble, they hire sleep specialists to basically make it so that the athletes are less sleep deprived. This is also, there's like research with Pac-12 and a couple other college sports of trying to figure out how to improve sleep because it has huge gains with athletics. Interestingly, and a lot of people will be like, I don't need 7 to 9 hours. I'm good on 5 to 6. What happens though is if you're chronically sleep deprived, you actually lose your perception of how tired you are. It's a weird thing that's been repeated by by a number of research studies. And so knowing that if you say you need 5 to 6 hours, like you probably need a little bit more. If you, there was a research study done, and this was in high school athletes, so take that with a grain of salt because I don't think any of us are in high school. But what they found was that athletes who slept fewer than 8 hours had were 2 times more likely to get injured than athletes who slept more than 8 hours. And then sleep also reinforces motor learning skills, reaction time, mood, and mental health. That this, again, pandemic is so vital right now, and in non-pandemic times too. And so with sleep and with my athletes, if someone is not sleeping 6 or 7, if someone is sleeping less than 7 hours a night, I'm not giving them workouts. I'd rather them get the hour of sleep than waking up an hour early to exercise, because it really affects your mood and mental health. So sleeping 6 hours and so that you can get your hour run in is not going to negate. It's going to be less. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, sorry. Sleeping less than 7 hours and getting your run in is not going to be as good as getting your 7 to 9 hours of sleep and skipping the run when it comes to your health. And there's a lot of research articles that back that up. If you want to get into this more, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker is a really good book. If you're not into reading, he also, I just saw, has like these short, like 2 to 3 minute videos on TED.com. And so if you want to kind of dig into more of the research and the science, he's great. He's an awesome researcher and like super obsessed with sleep. If you're also in sleep, shameless plug for me, I'm in Texas workshops. If you're interested in like building better sleep habits, check out my website for that. Can I repeat which one? Whoop. Which part, Sarah? Your website. Oh yeah. So if you're interested in, I'm leading a workshop in 2 weeks that's about building better sleep habits. And so if you're interested, you can check out, you can sign up for my newsletter on my website or follow me on social, and I'll be posting about that. And my website's ownyourmovement.com. All right. And then the other thing I mentioned, I don't know if it didn't cut out or did cut out, is Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. I highly recommend that book. All right. So the other one that's really interesting with running injuries and injuries in general is stress management. So one researcher, and this was in college athletes, found that mental stress increases injury risk. And how they looked at this was exam time, and found that athletes were 3 to 4 times more likely to get injured during exam time when their mental stress was a lot higher than in non-exam time. Stress also seems to blunt your body's ability to adapt to training. So this research study was done in non-college students. This is done in adults, looking at a 2-week cycling program and seeing how people adapted to cycle training. So they took non-exercising people, gave them a 2-week cycling program, and then measured them before and after. They also asked them about how stressed they were. And the people who said they were more stressed got less fit doing the exactly same program than the people who reported less stress. So the more stressed you are, the less you respond to training. And some of the ideas behind this, or the theory behind this, is when we are stressed, and especially with chronic stress, our body, or in any kind of stress, really, our body prioritizes, so our sympathetic nervous system goes on. That's our fight, flight, freeze. And we prioritize short-term life-saving systems of our body. So my heart rate goes up, my blood pressure goes up, I become really alert. And we deprioritize or turn off our recovery systems of our body. So my sleep drive goes down, my immune system will go down, my GI system goes down, my sex drive goes down. All the things that are for like maintenance phases of our bodies just turn off, because there's no point in falling asleep when a bear is chasing you, is kind of how this system evolved. And so the theory is that in your rest times, if you're still really stressed and that's your sympathetic nervous system is going, you're not going to be doing the recovery. Your body's not going to be able to go through the recovery phase as if you, because you're so like on almost. This is where a stress management toolbox is really good, and where some of the initial things are like socially distanced, or kind of with the Theragun, or our different tools we can have at home, can really help with some of these stress management benefits. And some of the like a couple percentage points. Oh, my audio is going out. Hold on. Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Victory. Sorry. This is like the theme of 2020 is, can you hear me? I muted myself. Oh, shoot. All right. Sorry about that, guys. All right. So really important to have a stress management toolbox. This is where you can throw in all of those kind of at-home recovery things that you like to do. So our foam rolling, our stretching, the Theraguns, the lacrosse balls, anything you want to like massage yourself with. You can also do non-recovery science things, or recovery world things, meaning if walking your dog or hanging out with your partner or closing the door and not talking to anybody is stress relieving. Do those things too. So having things that we can do really does help our recovery, both as an athlete and as a human. All right, so I'm going to pause for questions. All right, I don't think I have any. It means I'm so clear that no one has any questions. All right, so next part I'm going to talk about is what happens if something hurts. So unfortunately, running kind of hurts. And oh, and as Keith mentioned, can other workouts help with stress management? If the question is like other workouts like cross training, that might be the question that I'm reading, then yeah, like doing another workout can also help. I think it's important to have lots of things that help with stress management, and exercise can be a piece of that. But sleep and recovery and laughter and play and social connection, animals, nature, like all these other things can help too. A lot of times if exercise is your only way to manage stress, if something happens and you can't exercise, you're kind of in trouble. And so yes, other exercises, cross training can completely help. If yoga relaxes you, lifting weights help, cycling, anything you want, it is good. All right, so what happens if something gets hurt? Or what happens if something hurts? So running kind of sucks because things hurt occasionally. And it's tricky to know if you should run through it or if you shouldn't run through it and if you should stop. So my disclaimer again, not personal medical advice. Like listen to your body. Don't say Kate told me, please don't sue me. Thank you. So the first question I ask if something's hurting is, was there a trauma? Did you fall? Did a dog bite you? Did you come into impact really hard with something? Did you get hit by a bicycle? I don't know. Was there an accident? Or was it like something started to hurt at mile 4? If it was an accident, you do need to see medical attention because there's a higher risk that something else is going on. If it's something else, the odds of it being a catastrophic injury are quite low. With just running, it's usually that accident or something else. So this is an algorithm I created to kind of talk about, that I created as a PT of like when to clear yourself for running, basically. So the first question is the pain tolerable? Tolerable is going to kind of depend on you and the day that you're having. And so if you're more stressed out, if you're more tired, pain is actually, you feel pain more, interestingly enough. And so is the pain tolerable? If it is, move on to the next question. If it's not, don't run on it. If you have pain, is it the same or get better as you run? So staying the same would mean I start running. It's medical stuff. We use 0 out of 10 scales. If you've ever been to the doctor, they ask you that. So it's like how I speak. So 2 zeros, no pain, 10s like emergency room, worst pain imaginable. So if you like 2 out of 10, you kind of feel it. It stays consistent throughout the run. That's fine. That's okay to run on again. If it's tolerable, you can move on to the next question. If it's a 4 out of 10, and as you run, it gets better and you end and it's like a 1 to a 0, fantastic. Move on to the next question. If you start running and it's a 2 and you finish running and it's a 6, we don't like that. So the pain should not be getting worse as you're running. That indicates like you should probably go see a medical provider because something might be going on. If the answer to those 2 are yes, we then go on to, does it flare up after your run? So a flare up is when you're running and it feels fine, or the pain's getting better, it's tolerable. And then later that day or the next day, like, holy cow, it hurts so much. It really flared up. What that indicates is that you have some kind of an irritation, or something's really irritated and you're really sensitive. Not like sensitive as a person, but your body's being a bit sensitive to that activity. And so if it's flared up, we don't want to keep running on it because that's your body's way of saying like, hey, this doesn't feel great. So that's an indication to wait a couple days and try again. If it's not flaring up, the last question Sarah's telling me I talk with my hands and I move my head a lot, and I think that's throwing my audio off. So I apologize to everybody for that. I need to be less animated when I talk. All right. So does the pain flare up when you're running? If it doesn't flare up, great. You can move on to the last question. And the last one is, are you limping? And this is either while running or walking. If you're limping and don't have pain, while it might not be an injury, you're probably going to get one because you're going to have some weird compensation when you're running. So if you go through all these things and you're doing okay, then it's perfectly fine to run on it. Again, not personal medical information. Use your own judgment with this, but that's kind of my algorithm to figure out if you should or shouldn't run on this this injury, or on this thing that hurts, rather. All right, so I'm going to open it up to questions, and I usually get some questions, and if there's none, I can talk on a couple of the things that I usually get asked if we have some shy people. But yeah, if there are any questions, send them my way. And I think there's a couple seconds delay on the questions. If you're sending it and I don't see it right away, I apologize. What's my favorite cross-training exercise? All right. So my favorite personally is swimming. My favorite to give a client is anything they enjoy. If I say go swimming and you don't like swimming, you're not going to do it, and you're going to hate it and hate me for making you swim. So a cross-training exercise that I'd recommend is anything you enjoy. This can be not even super exercisey, like a dance class or jumping rope. Anything that moves your body that you enjoy doing and brings you, that you enjoy doing is a perfect cross-training exercise. From Daniela, question about starting to run again. What's a safe distance for week 1 and then to build on top of that week by week? Great question. Depending on your fitness level and how much you're walking, if you are currently not walking, if you're walking 0 miles, I'd actually start with walking and throwing in a little bit of like 1 to 2 minute jogs. If you're consistently walking 3 to 5 miles a week, then I would maybe start with like a 15 to 20 minute jog. And the walk runs are a great place to start, like 2 to 3 days a week. Just see how your body feels and then slowly add up from there. So it will kind of depend on what your fitness level's at to begin with. But again, start with walking if you're not walking, and otherwise 15, 20 minutes. And I'm a huge fan of walk runs if you're just starting, because so the cruddy part about starting to run is you constantly are feeling like you're dying because you get really out of breath and it sucks. And so when you do a walk run, you like get slightly out of breath and then you have a walk to let your body recover, and then you can get out of breath again. And so it can be a lot more, it just feels a lot better to run that way, and it's a lot less painful. So if you're starting out, start slow, and then do walk runs. I'm a huge fan of. Any other questions? No other questions. So other things I get asked about a bit. What's my favorite place to run? I'm really lucky. So I'm in DC, and we have this awesome, I have like a national park 300 meters from my house, which is kind of wild, Rock Creek Park. And so I love running in Rock Creek Park because I'm just a nature person and I love to be around trees. And so I love the trails, and Rock Creek Park is my favorite place. I cannot run on treadmills. Like, I don't know how to do it at all. I can run, I mean, when I'm in like good running shape, 8 to 10 miles outside, and I maybe will last a mile on a treadmill. So anything outside works for me, and I love running in the park near my house. Another question that I guess asked a lot is about running shoes. The idea with running shoes, and there's misinformation between the running shoe companies and the people who do research. And so the people that do research kind of have shown that if a shoe is comfortable for you, then you should probably run in it. If it is not comfortable, then don't run in it. So if the running store says this is the perfect shoe for you, but it's not really comfortable, don't do it. So find a comfortable shoe, stick with it. The shoe matters a little bit less than some of the training stuff does. Any last questions? By Sarah or Keith too? Barefoot shoes. All right. So if you guys read or saw, it's amazing how like a book can completely change the shoe industry. But what was it? Born to Run, and gosh, it must have been like 10, 12 years ago, came out. So barefoot shoes, if you do want to do barefoot training, you need to start walking barefoot and get your feet very used to basically get your muscles strong enough to handle it. I'm a huge fan personally of barefoot walking, but I run in supportive shoes because my feet are not strong enough to handle those impacts. And so if you're choosing to go barefoot running, make sure you're doing lots of barefoot walking first. And barefoot walking can mean in those barefoot shoes. And then you need to be building up so silly slow to get your feet muscles stronger. Because if you've lived in shoes your whole life, it's basically like the concept is you're casting your foot in a way and your muscles have atrophied or gotten really weak. So you very gradually need to build up your foot strength. Otherwise, you'll come to see me with plantar fasciitis or other foot injuries. Kate had a question. Arch support versus not for a neutral foot. Okay. So there was a study, and I didn't actually put this in my lecture, so which means I didn't review it today. But the military did a study basically looking at flat, neutral, or high arches, classifying them with the different like supportive running shoes. And so this was, again, mostly men. It was about like 1/3 men to women. So take that with a grain of salt. But they had really good compliance because in the military, when they do research, everyone has to follow up because like they're forced to. So they have really good follow up with it. And I want to say 2,000 or 3,000 participants. And what they found is there was no link to your arch height and the type of shoe you were in. So that comfort matters a lot more than how you're static standing. So when you're standing still, how your arch is and if you need arch support. If you're running and you have pain and the arch support is less painful, run with the arch support. If the neutral shoe is perfectly fine, then I would run in a neutral shoe or something with a little less support. Electrolytes. Does the water really help? Water helps. So yeah, water in general is really important. Electrolytes are really interesting. Okay, so there's water started being pushed a lot and drinking in general, like drinking while doing exercise by Gatorade. And there's been more medical emergency at races by people who've had too much water than people who are too dehydrated. And you are at a much higher risk. And this is less electrolytes, more water. So if you, it's called hyponatremia, excuse me. So you basically dilute yourself. You dilute your water content. So you're too much water, so there's not enough salt. I'm stuttering really about. I work in race medicine. I'm like the medic tent in Marine Corps Marathon. So I see all these people. But so electrolytes can help on hot and humid days. They're good, or they can be good. If you're thirsty, drink water. If you find yourself bonking at the end of a workout, you should look at your water and your food to make sure that you ate enough, like drank and had enough food and water. In DC, it's super humid. So when I'm training a lot, I do throw electrolytes in. I don't know if it's a placebo or not. It just makes me feel a bit better. If you don't have any kidney problems or if you don't have high blood pressure, it's fine to have electrolytes. It's fine to have a lot of salt. But yeah, jury's kind of out. There's a lot of misinformation with Gatorade. And anytime you have a company who's pushing a product doing the research, there's sometimes like questionable research. So if it feels good, do it. If it doesn't, don't stress. Really hot, humid, you probably should do it or at least try it. All right, Stacy asked, do I have any recs for road versus trail running to prevent injuries in general, aside from the obvious risks with the trail? Yeah, tripping and falling. It's kind of the same. So or I should say, okay, most of the research is done with road races, not trail, because we have a lot more road runners than trail runners. And a lot of trail runners tend to do a number of miles on the road just because of lack of, unless you live in Colorado or like me, you have a trail right outside your door. It's sometimes hard to find trail. There's not been any correlations between one causes more injury than the other. So whatever you have access to, whatever you enjoy, just being careful of, if you're training for a trail marathon, do a lot of your training on trails. If you're training for a road marathon, do a lot of your training on road. And if you're in that high mileage, there we go. If you're in that high mileage running, you don't want to switch, but there's not a ton of evidence that dirt or cement is better or worse for injuries, because you actually change your stride when you're running on them. So the impacts aren't exactly the same because you take different steps when you're running on different surfaces. Long-winded answer. All these answers are long-winded. Any other questions? I really like these. That's it. Awesome. Well, you guys were great. I'll have Sarah and Keith come back in.
Hello.
Hi.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was
Thank
fantastic.
you.
I appreciate that.
Except the audio, because I talked too much and moved my head. Sorry about that.
Like whether it's more shoulder involvement.
I was raised by two New Yorkers. Like, this is how I talk. So yeah.
I think it was mostly fine. We do have one more question. So I guess, Keith, we can just stay on while we throw this one at Kate.
Great.
Chris asks, do you ever recommend occasional sprint training to improve overall performance?
Yeah, actually, that's yes, 100% I do. Interval training is one of the best things you can do for cardiovascular adaptation. And so that's why HIIT workouts, I have like a lot of science behind them. So if you are doing like short jobs, they're called short jogs, you can add speed work in. These are called speed play or fartlek. It's Swedish for speed play. It's just a weird, funny sounding name. I call them speed play usually because clients get weirded out when I tell them to go do a fartlek. But basically what you do is you pick a mailbox or a tree or the end of your block and you run there. It's like really fun to do. You run there as fast as you humanly can. Like sprint like a child as quickly as you can go. I did that without moving my head, Sarah. You're welcome.
So good.
So you want to run as fast as you can and then walk until you get your breath back, and then run as fast as you can again, and then walk till you get your breath back. That can help both improve your cardiovascular adaptation, so your heart and your lungs getting stronger, and can help increase your pace on regular runs. So yes, definitely recommend it. And not always for newbies, because again, that intensity, we want to just do distance first, run a couple miles before you start adding speed to it.
Amazing. I also wanted to share that Kate says, so helpful. Thank you. Great talk.
Oh, thanks,
Christine
Kate.
says, great presentation, Kate. So I
wonder if that Christine was my mother, because my mother's name is Christine, or was somebody else.
No, definitely someone else.
Okay, someone else. And thanks, Christine. Also, my mom's on this and probably echoes that. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you again. This is awesome.
Of course.
Like, I didn't know things that I didn't know, if that makes sense.
I love talking about this because I think with running, it can be so scary, and to like get outside, both like outdoor, any outdoor thing. And so if you can break down barriers and explain it so you know how to be safe and make progress, it's awesome. Yeah. So thank you for inviting me.
No, thank you. And I really appreciate it. It's an acknowledgement of where you are. And I think that's a very sort of a great connection to, National Coming Out Day and the LGBTQ community. We got to kind of meet ourselves where we are, whether we're out running, whether we're sort of dealing with some of the changes and things that are going on in society right now, whatever it winds up being. So pacing yourself, recognizing where you are and taking your stride. I think that's just a great sort of message. And I think your ideas in and around the HIIT workouts is a great lead-in into what our next series is. So Sarah, do you want to talk a little bit about our Find Your Stride?
Let's let Kate go, because she's been talking nonstop for 45 minutes. And Kate, and we're going to email everyone with all the links to Kate's website and Instagram and all of that. So that'll be coming to everyone tomorrow. But
awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Bye.
All right, Keith. So should we tell everyone about this HIIT workout we got coming up?
Yeah, absolutely. So on October 12th, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we have Jeremy Heath that's going to be joining us, and it's going to be taking us through a HIIT workout, sort of helping us focus our minds and our bodies, strengthen ourselves so that when we get out on the road or we're just sort of navigating through life, we have a way to, as Kate was talking through, manage our stress, focus ourselves, so that we can get out there and do some of these, activities that we enjoy.
Amazing. And that is next week. Again, like donation based. So money should not hold anyone back, and you can sign up on the site. I also wanted to say that the following week, we have a really exciting keynote that Keith is actually going to be part of. He's interviewing Corey Woltering, who's a North Face athlete. He's an ultra runner. He's so cool. And he is going to come and talk to us about overcoming barriers, being an ultra runner, and having a variety of identities and how that connects him to the outdoors and to the sport. Keith, anything else you want to add to that one?
No, I think it's just going to be really exciting. He's doing an amazing amount of running in places that you and I could never imagine doing, and for distances that I think are greater than my car does. Exactly. So no, it should be a great conversation, and all of that can be registered for at mappyhour.org, or head to beagoat.org for the entire series. We actually have 2 others after that, which also give you about trainings and talking about community and getting out and running. Anything else?
So much good stuff this month. We really have it jam packed. Definitely hoping as the weather gets a little bit colder, perhaps running can be something that we all can use potentially in the winter if we can't go back to gyms and continue to be safe. So hopefully the last one where we actually get a training plan will be helpful to everyone as well. All right. So with that, should we do a giveaway?
We should do a giveaway.
Okay. So just so you guys know how this worked, I made a list of everyone who donated and then randomized it. And then I asked Keith for a number, and then he gave me a number, and then I found the number of the person. So I just want you to know that it was completely random, because it is someone who is a friend of mine who won, but it was random. So I'm so excited to announce that Tonic Tap won the duffel bag. So congratulations, Tonic.
Awesome.
We will make sure we get that to you. And I did also just want to say thank you to everyone who donated. Athlete Ally is an amazing organization. We're going to be raising money for them at every single one of these events. And if you didn't get a chance to donate yet, it's okay, because you can donate for the next one or the one after that. And you can check them out at athleteally.org. And all the donations from this are going to ending rampant homophobia and transphobia in sport. So really awesome organization. So thank you all for supporting.
Yeah, thank you all for coming online and joining us this evening and being part of our outdoor community and celebrating National Coming Out Day.
Yeah, which is Sunday. So
Which is Sunday.
I know, this is the warm up. I should have called it that.
Right.
All right. I think that's it for me.
That's it for me as well. We look forward to seeing you all on the next one, October 12th.
Perfect. All right.